Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Story can be encouraging, inspiring, and very transforming. We want guests to share their experiences and events in their lives that can benefit someone else. We all have a story, so I ask you to contact the website dealbyme.com and let us know that you have a story to share. If you are listening to this podcast, please leave us a comment or give or share to someone else. And if you're viewing on the YouTube, please leave us a comment and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Today we have with us Marnie Swedberg, who has a very interesting story to share with us. She is very inspirational. She's also motivational, and she shares what she says memorable analogies, riveting life stories, and perspective transforming concepts. A very interesting interview with her, and I think you will enjoy what she has to say to us today. Marnie, please share with us a little bit about yourself and where you've been interviewed from, and then we will get into a very interesting conversation as it relates to you.
Thanks, James. It's so great to be here. And hi, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Marnie Swedberg, and I'm dialing in today from St. Petersburg, Florida. And so excited to live in this time of the world, right? Where we can be wherever we are, talking to people all around the whole world. And it's so fun to be here. My background was I was raised the second of four girls in a family where the mom and dad loved God, loved each other, and loved us. So I have a very unique story in that compared to most people who had maybe none of those three or some of those three, but I had all three. And so I feel very blessed to come to know Jesus at 4 years old. I recognized that I was a naughty girl. And if I had to be perfect to get into heaven, I wasn't going to make it. So I knew I needed a savior, trusted Jesus at that time, and just been living for him ever after. Not perfectly, of course, we are in the human condition, but just loving him and being loved by him and sharing his love, James, with everybody I can. And so here to just share his love with you guys in maybe a way that is different from what you've experienced before.
All right, well, then, since that's the case, tell us a little bit about uh, what you're doing and how you do it. Obviously, you are sharing it in a little different way than maybe people are used to having, especially Christianity or their faith being shared. So, what do you do that's different?
Yeah. So I think, okay, but to put this into context, right? All of us are different. So I say if you hold up your thumb right now and you just look at that 1 inch of skin on you, that thumbprint is enough to convict you or acquit you of a crime in a court of law. One little inch of your skin. That's how unique you are. Then you take that and you multiply that times your whole self, your personality, your brain, how you process things, how you communicate, so everybody shares things uniquely. And one of the gifts that I have, because I really struggled in school growing up, I barely graduated from high school. I didn't really learn how to read until I was an adult, but went on to write now 14 books. And I'm a mentor to millions of people around the world through my online ministry and my radio show and things like that. And you know what's fascinating, James, is that no matter who you are, no matter how you are created by God to accomplish a specific work in this world. And it says in Peter that he set up good works for us to do before he even created you. He assigned good works to your account, and he built you in just that way. So if you can imagine a bicycle trying to be a race car, that bike would forever feel like a loser. Even if it won the biggest bicycle race, it would feel bad because it wasn't as fast as the race car. But then the race car maybe wants to be a jet plane. Never could, always too slow. But then the jet plane maybe sees a rocket go into outer space and just like, I'm too slow. But if we are who God created us to be, in that there is joy, we can do the impossible because God is in us, working through us.
Your story is so interesting. As I read your bio, your profile, and I'm curious because you have done so much. Notice that you've been on different TV programs, CBS, ABC,
Yeah.
CNBC,
Yeah.
and a lot of interesting, look like local programs as well. How do you get to do all of that, and what were you doing to get you into those places?
Hmm. Well, basically, what I've come to understand is that what you do is you do what God calls you to do, the way
Okay.
that only you can do, to the best of your ability, letting God flow through you. And if he chooses to put you on those platforms, that's when you get there. And I've actually done a lot of study. When COVID hit, James, I decided I'm shut down. Okay, so I run womenspeakers.com is one of the things I do. Over 1,300 Christian women speakers getting connected with by planners all over the country, all over the world, and boom, completely crickets. Not one speaking invite coming through because it's all shut down, right? So I decided, well, I'm going to use this year now to really get to the bottom of this marketing thing and figure out how people go viral and all this. And I read so many books and took courses and got coaching. And the bottom line is, if you get the break that takes you viral, you get to go viral. And if you don't, you don't. It's just pretty simple.
That's so true. I know that's true.
And you know what we all want to take the name of Jesus viral, right? I mean, if we could have one dream, one wish, one prayer, it'd be to reach more people with the good news of Jesus, because him in our lives changes everything. So our motivation is great. But do we say that the little widow who fed Elijah her last little dinner and made it into the Bible is any worse off for not going viral than maybe, Daniel, who was in charge, or Joseph, who was in Egypt, in charge of a whole country? Who is more important in God's perspective? So I think we have to kind of change how we're looking at this and say, God, what do you want me to do? And I'm going to let you decide where that goes. And that's all I've really done. I've just continued to do the next thing God put in my heart to do, letting him flow through me. And when I say flow through me, I like to use the analogy of a straw. So we all think that when there's a cup of water, okay, that we're supposed to be the water, and then other people come and they drink out of our lives and we give them Jesus, and that's how we're supposed to do it. But that's not really how it works. Really, we're the straw. And so if you think of the cup of water, Jesus is the living water, not me, not you. We don't have any responsibility to be Jesus in that way. What we have a responsibility to do is let him flow through our lives like the water flows through a straw that doesn't have any hindrance in it. So our job is to just, when we have sin in our lives that separates us and that causes friction in that flow, that's when we position ourselves and say, just like we did the first time, Jesus, I need you. I'm a sinner and I need you. And we ask for forgiveness for whatever it is that's blocking the flow. But that is such a different way to live than most Christians live, by trying to produce something that meets the need. There's nothing wrong with that if God's doing it through you. But if you're trying to do it on your own, you're probably been bashing your head against the wall quite a bit.
I'm listening to what you say. It's interesting because most people who are really trying to move forward don't want to include or say that they are very religious or their faith, got them there. You are embracing it, and which is
Mm,
really amazing.
mm.
I'm a retired pastor, so your interview is really interesting to me because that's has been my life. I pastor for almost 32 years at the same church. So I know where you're coming from, and I'm very excited to hear you say how you know, embrace Jesus as your focal point. Uh, so saying that, what are your perspective transforming biblical success principles? I know you kind of taught about that.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah, so I did years ago, I was the Success Principles official guide at selfgrowth.com, which is the largest online directory of self growth resources in the whole world. And I was the Success Principles official guide. And in that position, I was retained to put together this coaching program, which I called the Success Principles Intensive SPI, coaching certification program. And I go through, and there are so many different things that the world says one way and God says another way, and where the breakage is, where is that, what's really true compared to what we're being fed as truth. So let's just start with the definition of success, just to begin with. Success in the dictionary is the attainment of a specific goal. So you set a goal, and when you reach the goal, you're a success, right? Okay, so we were raising our family in Warroad, Minnesota, which is on the Canadian border. And Warroad, Minnesota, there's never been an Olympic hockey team win that doesn't have players from our little tiny town of 1,800 people. So you can imagine that with this focus on hockey, it's called Hockeytown, USA. With this focus on hockey, they've got their kids in skates at 2 and 3 years old. And they just live at the rink. They're called rink rats, and that's what they do. And so my son grew up with Gigi Marvin, who went on to be on a silver and a gold Olympic team. Well, Gigi's goal the whole time was to become a gold medal Olympian. So all her whole growing up and into her young adulthood, she worked toward becoming a success, toward becoming a gold medal Olympian. And then when she got there, she stood on the podium and she held her gold medal. And then she got down, and now she has to defend that title because she did it, but now she has to defend the title. That's how success works in the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was amazing, right? I mean, wow, a gold medal at the Olympics. It's just what an achievement. But the way that God set us up to live in our personal lives is to seek his well done, my good and faithful servant. And so we can actually, James, do that every single day. We can do that. When I go to bed at night, I just ask God, how is it with us tonight? And he'll either say, good, go to sleep, well done. Or he'll say, well, there's a few things we have to talk about tonight. At which point I need to just work through some stuff that I blew during the day and go to sleep in God's arms at peace. This is real life. No waiting until we get to heaven to find out if we have a well done. No. Every day, throughout the day, we can check in with God. How am I doing? In fact, one of the things I do is I keep a little timer beside my desk here, and I set it for 20 minutes. You could set it for any amount of time, but I set it for 20 minutes. And every 20 minutes, if I'm not on an interview like this or in a meeting, every 20 minutes, I just check in with God. How's it going? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Just for a moment, just for a moment, just check in, because success to me is God's well done, Marnie. You've done what you're supposed to do right now.
I bring guests on this podcast to hopefully inspire, encourage and transform lives of other folk. But you're transforming me today. You inspiring me. This is awesome. I do want to just ask you this. If you were to share with listeners of this podcast who have gone through some challenging moments in their lives, it could be anything, a bad marriage, death, something else happened. I mean, it could be anything. it's just some challenging situation. What would you say to them? You mean you are a person who I believe could really give them some good advice, and I know they would like to hear that from you. Could you share that with them right now?
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you. I want to start by saying that I'm going to give you a list of hard things that I've gone through, not to minimize your list, because everybody has their own list. And sometimes, something smaller to someone else can be gigantic to you, right? And
Right.
there's a ton of stuff not on my list. Praise God, right? None of us have a full list. We're so grateful that our list is not full. But I've been through car wrecks and ambulance rides and surgeries, sudden death in the family, cancer in the family, head injury in the family. We've been through business setbacks. We've been through tornadoes and fires and floods. We've been through so many things, James. And you always say, what's hard is going to either make you better or make you bitter. I like the gal who wrote the book Way of Agape, Nancy Missler, and she's now gone on to heaven. But she defines spiritual maturity not by what's happening in your life, but by how long it takes you to run that to Jesus. Wow, that changed my life because I kept thinking, if God was for me, why are all these things happening? But when you read the Bible, you just can't go there because everybody in the Bible had trouble. I mean, there's just basically nobody who didn't have trouble. And so we know that even in the Hall of Faith, the way those people got there is they had trouble. And so we know that everything can't just be perfect all the time. And it isn't about that. It's about how long it takes me to run this to Jesus. And in Revelation 3, verse 20, it says, Jesus is speaking and he says, behold, I stand at your heart's door and I knock. And I want to come in and sup with you. How I read that verse, because it's written actually to Christians. A lot of times we use that to invite someone to accept Christ the first time. And I think Jesus loves that. But it's really written to Christians. And he's actually, when I'm in trouble here as much as I'm in trouble out here. In my brain as much as I am with my circumstances. And he's standing at my heart's door and he's knocking and he's saying, Marnie, can I come in and speak to you about this from my perspective? That's why every morning when I'm waking up, before I even open my eyes in my bed, I'm saying, good morning, Daddy. And I always say that, good morning, Daddy. I'm so glad that you're up in heaven and not stuck here with me on earth, because you have perfect perspective and perfect power. And I go on to say the rest of the Lord's Prayer in that same personalized way. I do that before I get up every day to just remind myself and to start my communication with God that then goes on, and I breathe the air of prayer all day long as I go through my day. So when you are going through a difficult thing, it's actually a good thing. It's Jesus standing at your heart's door saying, come on in and talk with me about this, because I have a different perspective than what you're experiencing.
What can I say? You are an amazing individual, and I like the way you have shared and is sharing your experiences to help others, because that's very important. I just believe in encouraging. I believe in inspiring, and I believe in transforming. And that's the reason I did this, because I was when I was about to retire, I wanted to continue my ministry, and the one way I saw of continuing it was to try to encourage, try to inspire, try to transform lives, and bringing on guests like you, are helping me to do that. So I do appreciate it. You also talked about, being involved with women. I saw where you are. I've been viewed for magazines, including the Women's World magazine, business journals, all over. Tell us a little bit about that. How would all of that occur?
Right. So my very first book, which was called, the final name on the book was Marnie's Kitchen Shortcuts. So
Okay.
my first book came out in a very secular format. It was looked at by Focus on the Family, and they almost did it, but then they had another cookbook coming out at the time, and they were like, well, we're just not really a cookbook company. And so they rejected mine and took the other one, but gave me a beautiful letter of recommendation that got me in with St. Martin's Press in New York. And so my book was published with St. Martin's Press. And, when the catalog came out, James, I have to tell you, I felt kind of sick to my stomach because I was right across the page from ACDC. And I thought, oh my goodness, what has happened to me?
I got
That
you.
wasn't what I was envisioning. And but God used that little book to take me on all kinds of shows and all kinds of different places that I wouldn't have otherwise gone. And then over the years, we owned a restaurant and we owned a retail store. And because of that business experience, then I got interviewed by all kinds of business journals and different things like that, and even got to go train business leaders around the world, helping to start some businesses in Africa and different places like that for women. And so, all the different things that are going on in your life, whoever you are listening to me, all the different things that are happening in your life, God has plans to use them all. And while you're walking through them, you may be thinking, what's going on here?
Mhm.
How could this be a good thing? But God knows what He's doing, and He's going to help you to move forward. One of my best selling little books, James, is called Scavenger Hunt Handbook. It came out way back in 2004. And that little book sold like hotcakes, just sold and sold and sold and sold. And then all of a sudden it stopped selling. And I thought, what's going on here? But you know what had happened is that at the time I wrote the book, there were hardly any resources out there for people planning scavenger hunts. It was just very few things out there. And I realized, wow, I'm just holding a gold mine here because I love scavenger hunts. And I had so many that I'd done, and other people shared with me that they'd done and loved. And so I put that book together, and it got published by Publish America. And then it just had great sales, and then it stopped having sales. It got some bad reviews at that point because people started writing things like, why are you selling this? I can find all of these free online.
Mm.
Well, when I wrote it, they weren't free online.
Online, right.
Where did they get it to put it online? Maybe out of my book.
I got
And
you.
people have talked to me through the years about they're afraid to put their stuff out there because maybe it'll get abused, maybe people will
Mhm.
steal it and not give them
Mhm.
credit. And all
Mhm.
I know from experience is that that actually might happen. But who cares? If
Yeah.
God calls you to do it for a season, for a reason, let yourself be used by Him for whatever He wants, and just let Him decide on the outcomes.
Okay. Well, you know, listeners, all I can say is hold on for a moment. Don't go into place because we're going to come back with a couple of more good, interesting discussion with Marnie. She is awesome. But first, let me ask you, Marnie. I I noticed you have 13 published books, and you speak to many organizations about these books. So could you please tell us about where uh, listeners of this podcast can get your books, so how they can learn more about you? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
you said so much today, so I know they they want to be able to find a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. It's just my name, Marnie, Marnie. And if you just go to marnie.com, that's me, and you can find everything right there.
Okay, okay, that sounds great. That sounds great. I hope that listeners got that, and please look her up. What are the ABCs of success, Monty? You talk about that a little bit. What are
Mm.
they?
This is a program that I do with leaders and oftentimes in secular settings. And I have A through E. And this was done from research of presidents and CEOs and Olympians. And I love to share these strategies. I'm going to give you just the most high level overview of this right now
Mhm.
because this is like a 2-hour training that I do. So we'll just tap on the top here. But A stands for assess, and assign value. So let's say that you find your new job is going to require you to spend an hour each way commuting each day. Well, you assess and you're like, yes, this is the job I wanted. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. That's a long time to be commuting. So assign it a value. What are you going to use that hour for? Because you could use it to learn things. I mean, you could learn a language, you could learn anything through podcasts. Now you can learn all kinds of things, or you could use it to develop relationship. You could use it to record something that someone else transcribes. You assign it a value and you say, okay, since this is necessary in my life, I choose to assign it a value. And if you assess it and you realize you don't need it, then get rid of it. don't keep it if it's not necessary. So the second one is batch. B is for batch. We think of making a batch of cookies because it actually would be impossible to make something less than a batch if it only takes one egg. I mean, you can't really divide an egg very well into multiple little pieces. So we just make a whole batch at a time, but we fail to do that in many other areas of our life. So we'll take every email as it blings in. Well, that is hugely distracting. You can't really get anything done if you do that. Every text message, every personal message, every messenger chat. I mean, if you let all of that interrupt you nonstop all day long, you won't get anything else done. That's all you're going to do. So batch it. Set aside certain times when you look at certain things and do certain types of jobs. Another thing is, like when you're running errands, have batch the same kind of things together and have if you're doing groceries, have that be last so your stuff doesn't, thaw out or whatever. I mean, just batch it and really use your time. C is for calculate. You want to be calculating the cost of everything. And cost isn't just money. Cost is time, cost is stress, cost is what you would have done if you didn't do this. I mean, calculate everything. D is for delegate or do. So if you need to do it yourself, do it yourself. And if you don't, figure out a way to delegate as soon as possible. That frees you up to do what only you can do. And then E is for evaluate. So the bookends are A for assess and E for evaluate. And you want to keep evaluating everything so that you don't end up years from now doing something just because you always have. You want to make sure that what you're doing is still serving you, serving God, and serving others.
Wow, that's all I can say. Wow, it's so very interesting. We could just talk for the longest. I know we could, but there is one thing that I saw as I was going through your bio, and I do want to ask you about that. And so, how do you align your priorities with God? That's that's an interesting discussion, but I'd like to just know how you do it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's such a great question. And I think that having a real relationship with God, knowing that He's a real being, that He really cares, that He is as available to you if you're, going to give a speech to millions as He is if you lost your keys. He is that available to us. He's so real and he's so personal, and he wants to have a relationship with you. So just, can I tell you, this is I kind of tease around a little bit with God and with others in this point. I like to use this as my job description. Can I tell you what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is my very fun job description. I am the personal assistant to the King of the universe. And every morning I sit with him in private consultation and he gives me my instructions for the day. And then all day long, I run around doing all of his errands as he provides all the resources, and the pay is great, but the retirement plan is literally out of this world. See, that's how we align ourselves with Christ. We actually let him tell us what to do. And then we go do it with joy. And if he calls us to it, he will walk us through it. And it may be difficult. It may be confusing. It may take longer than we think, but if it is God, we can just rest that we are on the right track and our lives align with his idea for our lives. And what could be better than that?
Marnie, you are amazing.
Oh. We serve a big God. That's all I know.
You are amazing. And I do appreciate you just being a part of this podcast today. And there you have it, Marnie Swedberg, who is an international leadership mentor. She is the author of 13 books, the host of her own radio talk show. She is a media expert and a keynote speaker for organizations around the world. I'm telling you, she is exciting, and I ask you to please check her books out. Uh, Check everything out that you can possibly find on this amazing guest, Marnie Swedberg. Again, thank you so very much for sharing with us today.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. Thank you.